Before we begin, I just want to make clear that this video is meant to be a constructive criticism of Geometry Dash, and nothing aggressive or anything like that. With that in mind, let's get started. Enjoy. The nearly decade-old Geometry Dash is a game that has grown greatly since its release, with countless players having contributed to the community and its levels. To put this into perspective, we have reached over 87 million level IDs in Geometry Dash, showing just how many levels have been created in the game's history. But with such a great amount of levels comes the need for a search system that allows the player to go through them. In this video, I'll discuss some of the inadequacies of the GD search system, the implications of these inadequacies, and what can be done to improve the system. One area where the Geometry Dash search system falls short is the lack of range functions, meaning things that allow you to restrict the range of certain elements of levels you are looking for. Two important filters that come to mind in this regard would be an ID range function and a like or dislike function. These features would enable the player to find levels that were older, more obscure, or even those that had been subjected to dislike bots, making the game's history and its obscurities much more accessible to the player base. As it stands, with these features being non-existent, the older or more obscure levels are pushed aside in favor of newer and more popular levels, making the game's past quite a bit more difficult for the average player to access. In addition, the system itself has a few more obvious improvements to be made. One flaw experienced by anyone trying to search far back in the game's levels is the page number limit, or when the page number box is limited to a number of 999, after which the player will have to scroll manually. This means that the player is limited to easy access to roughly 10,000 levels on their search, which may be nowhere near adequate to perform a convenient and time-efficient search for levels that are older or more obscure. This could be fixed, of course, by increasing the maximum typable amount of pages above 999, making these levels more accessible. Another, and perhaps the most obvious flaw with GD's search system, is the lack of performance when delving into later pages within the search system. The buffering that ensues when the player tries to go far back in the level record can often be very frustrating or even make doing so impossible, once again making older or more obscure levels much harder to access for the common player. In terms of fixing this issue, Rob might take some sort of measure to increase the performance of the search engine, although admittedly I'm not sure how this would occur. I'm sure it would probably be pretty difficult to carry out, but nonetheless it is an issue posed by the search system, so I felt it appropriate to discuss here. While there are many issues to point out about the search system, it's also worth noting that there are many mods that can help combat some of these issues, such as the Better Info mod created by Kavulton. Mods like these allow for more search restrictions and options, thus combating some of the issues mentioned here. However, despite the efforts of these mods, they are not perfect, and it must also be noted that they aren't always accessible to everyone, making them a fix only for some players. So what does it matter if we can't go back in the game's past and find older or more obscure parts of Geometry Dash? When this part of GD is made inaccessible, a very valuable part of the game is lost: its history. When the game's past is hard to access, we are no longer able to see and experience where the game first began, and not only lose a large chunk of the game's earliest levels, but simply lose many interesting stories and histories of levels unknown to us. In other words, there is a massive wealth of knowledge about the game's past yet to be seen in these old and obscure levels, knowledge that is lost to time if we don't have the ability to access it. As a result, it becomes obvious why the search engine of Geometry Dash needs to be changed. Otherwise, a massive and important part of the game's history may be lost for its players. As usual, most of the stuff in this video is just my opinion, so I'd love to hear yours in the comments below. Have a great day.